Okay, we're going to try this all over again. We tried this at 10 o'clock, but apparently we had some technical difficulties. Good morning. It is Wednesday, March 21st, 2018, and you are live on Java with Jerry. We're coming to you, as always, from the penthouse suite of Stadium Center in the Platinum Triangle here in Anaheim, California, right across the street from Angel Stadium. And I'm excited about the first day of spring. That's why I wore yellow, just for you, so I could look like a big blooming poppy or something. And I'm excited more because one of my favorite people in the world, Darrell Johnson, the CEO of the Orange County Transportation Authority, is here. And so we'll talk about mobility. We'll talk about all the things that he's doing for all 3.2 million plus of you in every form of transportation with the exception of airplanes, although we'll ask him whether or not he's got anything to do with airplanes. I think he does transportation into the airport, so he's even responsible for that. And even has responsibility for people who don't have anything motorized. We'll talk about all of that and all the exciting stuff that he is planning for your future. And we'll have commentary on the news, as always. I always do that. And then our special feature today is going to be dumb criminals, and I've got some special stories for dumb criminals to go, especially with this episode of Java with Jerry. So those of you who are watching live know how to find it. You can always find it on Facebook at this hour if it works for you. If not, you can go to orangesliced.com, pick up all the prior episodes, watch this one over and over again because you'll learn a lot from Darrell. He's got a lot to tell you. And I will even tell you a couple of secrets about him that you might not know, but I'm a former chair, and so I got a couple of secrets about him, about his life that you don't know, and I'll share it with you. We appreciate you being here. We hope you'll tune in and watch it over and over. All right, let's go to the news, and then we'll bring Darrell in. I want to race through the news, even though there's a lot to talk about, because I won't have enough time to get through all the things that I've been plotting to ask Darrell about. So I think you may have heard by now the news that the bomber in Austin, Texas, who was responsible for 7 bombings, actually blew himself up this morning. I guess they'd closed in on him, and they had him in a car outside the hotel where he was staging from. They've now closed in on his house. Really disconcerting to have everybody terrorized like that throughout Austin, Texas, but I'm glad that episode may have come to an end. Although the authorities aren't sure it's over yet. They're worried because he was shipping stuff through FedEx, that he may have other bombs around the area and maybe have planted some, maybe have shipped some. So they're being very vigilant about that. And of course, they've centered it on where he was living, so they have to be careful that that's not booby-trapped. People forget how dangerous it is for people in public safety on these bomb threats. Maybe we'll ask Darrell a little bit about how the Orange County Sheriff worked public transportation, because they have bomb-sniffing dogs and they have the state-of-the-art stuff. So I'm glad to hear that that story may be over for those of you in Austin, Texas. Sorry to hear you had to go through that. In state news, the state news that I picked actually has to do with an Orange County city, one of the smallest cities in Orange County, the second smallest, I think, next to Villa Park, and that's Los Alamitos. They decided to stick it to the man, to the state of California, on their Prop 54 sanctuary state status. So they voted Monday 4-1 to say, yeah, no, we're not going to participate in the state's policy, which will probably draw tons of lawsuits and maybe trouble with the state. And it's ironic, I was saying to some friends this morning, that the little city of Los Alamitos is standing up to the giant state of California that's standing up to the even gianter country of the United States, and everybody at different levels are in a power struggle. So stay tuned to what happens in Los Alamitos. You got to hand it to them for being bold. The local news story, truly local, is that Judge Carter had a session last week on the homelessness again and rolled up his interventionist sleeves and went to work on solving the homeless problem. And so that's created all kinds of ripple problems. But voila, the county found $71 million worth of mental health money, which they're now transmuting into housing money. I don't know how that works, but they're going to try to find a way to find housing for all these homeless folks that are now running out of their 30-day vouchers in the motels that they were moved to. And it's just an example of moving the problem around the county rather than solving the problem. I think we do really need to roll up our sleeves and try to figure out how to tackle this. Just moving them to another tent city is going to create more problems for both that population and, frankly, for all the people who have to live around that tent city. It's not a place to put them where there are no services or no supportive services and there's no running water and no sanitation. It's just dumb. Sports story. It's March Madness, and it's March, so there will be madness. UMBC beat #1 seed Virginia. UMBC, the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, I think that stands for, although one of the commentators at March Madness says it really stands for You Must Be Cinderella. Well, they lasted one game, took out the Cavaliers, and then fell. Florida State took out Xavier. Everyone's bracket is completely busted by now. And what a weird tournament this year. Notre Dame is snubbed. SC is snubbed. snubbed. UCLA can't play in. They couldn't even get into the tournament. UCLA lost on a play-in game. Cal State Fullerton, that was our last hope as our Cinderella, gets busted out. Everybody's brackets are ruined. All right, that's it for the news. Let's bring Darrell in and talk about something that's successful rather than the March Madness and all the problems that we have in the news. Darrell, come on in. We're going to bring you on set. He's had to listen to all of this like you. Welcome.
Thanks, Jerry. Thanks for having me on.
Here. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming. So I've got 400 questions for you, none of which we'll all get to.
We got 401 answers.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. Let's talk a little bit about OCTA and what it really does. I talked about you having responsibility for all mobility, but talk a little bit about the agency and why it's multimodal.
Well, I think, we have 58 counties in California, and only 3 of them are structured from a transportation standpoint like Orange County. It's us, Los Angeles County, Santa Clara County, and by that I mean we have a consolidated agency, so we do the freeway planning and funding, we do local streets planning and funding, we run the bus system, we participate in Metrolink, we own the 91 Express lanes. There's probably a few other things I'm forgetting about, but most of them are sort of single agency, but we pull everything together, and I think from a planning perspective and a big picture perspective of what our county needs, it's the right structure for us. And it's been that way since 1991. Yeah,
I ignored reading your bio, but I know you've had a long, and I did it because either people know you or they will get to know you now, and I want time for all these questions. But I think you ought to talk about the fact that you've watched this transportation issue for your entire career, right? You've always been in transportation.
Absolutely. I went to school locally at UC Riverside. My first job was an intern at the Riverside County Transportation Commission in the late 80s. And this year,
and don't you wish you had him back as an intern now with all this brilliance?
Well, this marks 28 years of working professionally in transportation, and I think we've evolved a lot as a state. 28 years ago we had less than 30 million people. Now we're pushing to 40 million people. And so there's really, when I look at it, there's not one thing that's going to solve mobility issues in our county or in our region. We really have to look at a whole toolbox of things, and I think that idea of having OCTA looking at multiple things as part of the solutions to mobility is really, really critical.
Yeah, I think it is. Let's talk about Measure M. We are a self-help county, and maybe you want to talk a little bit about what self-help counties are as well as a background, but tell us why being a self-help county is important and what Measure M means to us in mobility.
Well, just quick background. Most in the old days, prior to self-help counties, you got funding from the state or federal government for transportation. And California pioneered this idea that raising a half-cent local sales tax or a quarter cent or some extra funds to dedicate back to transportation, that was pioneered in the late 80s. Now we have 24 counties.
That you keep locally.
You keep locally. So you raise a half-cent sales tax in Orange County's case, a half-cent sales tax. We keep it locally. It's controlled locally. Washington doesn't have their hands in the pie. Sacramento doesn't either. And now we have 24 counties generating close to $200 billion over the next 2 decades.
That's a lot of money.
For transportation. So we've done that in Orange County. We had Measure M1 from 91 to 2011, and now we have Measure M2 that picked up right when Measure M1 ended in 2011. That'll go through 2041.
Let's talk about the success of Measure M1. It raised about $4 billion, but it really did much more than $4 billion worth of bang for your buck. Talk a little bit about some of the things that we did in Measure 1.
Well, in Measure M1, if you can think about Orange County in pre-1995, the I-5 wasn't widened, the 91 wasn't widened, the 57 wasn't improved, some of the carpool system wasn't there. So we, through Measure M1 and through the local taxpayers, improved all of those freeways. But that $4 billion, which is a lot of money, really brought in about another $2 to $3 billion of state and federal funds because we were able to say, hey, we've got our money on the table. Can you bring some of your money in and let's get things done faster and better and get it done as soon as we can.
And really you touched on the secret for OCTA in my view and why I think it's one of the best run government agencies anywhere, and that's that it uses leverage, right? It uses the power of its own economic ability to go get state and federal funds because it's always ahead of the game. It has projects engineered. Talk a little bit about how that planning makes a difference.
Absolutely. You were on the board for a while, a few years back, and I think the board was the same before that and the same today, which is there's a lot of effort put in getting things ready up front. So we can say it's not just about getting money from other places, it's about doing things faster, better, getting it out to the voters and the users and the taxpayers quicker. So when we get things ready, we want to be able to get those projects ready so we can say we've got our money on the table, let us bring some of your money and let's get that thing done quicker. And that whole idea of not waiting to get the improvements out, getting it done sooner, because then the drivers get to it sooner.
That's right.
The riders get to it sooner. The community gets to that sooner.
Right, and it's actually leveraging your tax dollars in a really intelligent way to get you the product quicker. And so Measure M1 is expiring in 2011, and in 2006, you go out and back to the voters and say, let's talk about a second measure. Why did you go 5 years before the end of the first term?
Well, I think we wanted to look at a couple of things. One is Measure M1 was managed pretty efficiently. We delivered everything we were going to promise. And
then some.
In fact, we had extra, I'll say extra money, but we did things in a way that left us with some capacity, financial capacity. So we did the Garden Grove Freeway, the 22 freeway. We put about another $500 million into that at the time. But we wanted to take that opportunity to the voters in 2006 and say, if you like what you've seen in the last 15 years or so, give us another shot at it.
Yeah.
You know, we made some promises, we kept those promises, we think we can do it again. But we want to get an early start on it. There's so much planning that has to go into getting a highway project ready for construction that we thought if we could get the green light from the voters in 06, even if the funds didn't show up until 2011, we could spend that 5-year process or that time frame doing all the planning, the environmental clearances, the community outreach, the operations planning, all those things that take so much time.
Yeah, and boy, did you! Between 2006, by the way, went to the ballot box in 2006, 5 years early. It passed like that because people had seen what Measure M1 did, and by 70%, which is unheard of for a tax measure, and then. You guys really went to work. So talk about the early action plan, what the board asked you to do and what you accomplished, because it's astounding what happened in those 5 years.
Well, as soon as we got the passage by the voters in the fall of 06, we went right to work. And you mentioned we had the board adopt something called the early action plan. And what that really said is we're going to get every highway project environmentally cleared in the next 5 years. We're going to get it ready to go and planned. And we're going to get about half of that under construction in the next few years. We're going to put about $1 billion into local streets and roads, pothole repair. We're going to get all of those things ready. And the idea was to really just front load it. Obviously, the Great Recession happened, and that even worked to a certain degree in our benefit because certain activities got cheaper. Yeah. And so we took advantage of that as well. And that really front loaded that. And the end result is we're going to get about 2/3 of the freeway program delivered out and built in about half the time that we originally anticipated.
That's amazing. I mean, and the other thing you did, and I think this is sort of innovative again, another example of innovation from OCTA, is you did all the environmental clearances at once and work with all the agencies. Talk a little bit about our master plan for environmental work.
So a couple things. We have built into Measure M2, we have an environmental mitigation program. And normally what happens when you do a project, you mitigate some of your environmental impacts. And that's appropriate and it makes sense. And it's what's been in place for a number of years. What we wanted to do was say there's a better way to do this. So we built into our program a way to acquire about 1,100 acres of open space, work on water quality programs, and we ultimately signed last June a master plan with the federal and state resource agencies that give us the ability to do all of the freeway projects as a program. Yeah. That has saved a huge amount of time, a significant amount of money, and we've made good stewards of ourselves in Orange County, and we made friends with the environmental community where they see the benefit of the highway program and they see the benefit of the open space. It's really a win-win.
And when I talk to the environmental people who are active in all kinds of projects around the county, the one thing they always brag about is the effort that they made as partners with OCTA and what they've been able to accomplish, and it's being copied in other places. All right, let's talk about the fact that you front-loaded all these freeway programs you're going to get done early, but you've got the biggest one ever for our agency. Now it's had its groundbreaking in the I-405 corridor. Let's talk about the I-405 project because it's really a big one.
It is a big one. It's 16 miles between Costa Mesa and the LA County line, essentially Long Beach. So really from the 73 405 interchange all the way up to the 605 405 22 interchange.
Wow. And a small price tag. It's $1.9 billion, right?
$1.9 billion. And we're under construction now. We had a big groundbreaking in January. About 2 weeks ago, what I call real construction started, where if you drive now, you can see some things happening on the side of the freeway. Yeah. Later this summer, you'll see some bridge demolition. But the end result is we're making a major investment into the busiest traveled corridor, not only in Orange County and the state of California, but in the nation. We have almost 400,000 cars a day at the north end of the corridor. Wow. That's really a lot of cars.
That's a lot of Californians moving. And the movement of goods and people is an important aspect in this, but you're doing it in a special way. You're adding a general purpose lane, but then you're also adding a lane that blends with the HOV lanes in a sort of unique managed lane capacity. So talk a little bit about that part of the project.
So we have this corridor there that's been there since the 60s. It's built up. and there is really nowhere to go. So the idea there was to look at the space we had and how can we manage it the best. So we are adding a regular lane, or what we call a general purpose lane in each direction. We're improving all the interchanges, local interchanges and bridges. But what we are also doing is taking the existing HOV lane, which was built in the 80s, and adding with that a new lane that will be a priced managed lane or express lane, very similar to the 91 express lane.
Which has been enormously successful.
Enormously successful. In fact, in today's New York Times, there's an article about congestion pricing, and they talked about Orange County, and I got quoted in it, so it's a great article. Right?
Oh, go get it. Today's New York Times?
Today's New York Times.
Darrell's quoted. You got to read it now.
But it talks about this congestion pricing idea, and this idea that we can't build ourselves out of it from a width standpoint, so we have to manage what we have. And it'll be congestion priced. It'll allow people to have a reliable trip for that 16 miles at their rush hour. 16 miles, 20 minutes. That's really the goal there.
And it's really sort of the future of how we manage congestion, right, Darrell? I mean, now we did the 91 freeway. We took it back into public hands when it was in a private sector, and have managed that 91 corridor brilliantly. And our partners on the Riverside side now, Ann Mayer and her crew at RCTC have done the same thing in their county. And now it's congestion price, and it makes a big difference in that commute. And you're going to do it on the 405. That's really sort of where we're headed, isn't it, in California?
I think it is. You know, it's maybe a bit of a hard conversation to think about sometimes, but we have a region that's close to 20 million people. We're not making any more space or any more land, and we have a lot of people moving through the corridors. And just in the last 2 years, the 91 corridor you mentioned, forget the express lanes, overall traffic volumes are up almost 20% in the last 2 years. A good economy drives traffic, drives goods movement, and so getting that throughput through, getting the most vehicles we can get through that corridor on all the lanes at any given part of the day, the rush hour, non-rush hour, overnight, is really important. And the whole focus on the 405 is to do that. And it took some creative financing to get there, to figure out how to do it.
Let's talk about that, because I talk all the time about the fact that you're an innovative agency, and I brag about it, but the financing that you did on the 405 is saving hundreds of millions of dollars. Julie's trying to show me where we are. Thank you, Julie. It's saving us hundreds of millions of dollars. So talk a little bit about the TIFIA loan, what it is, how you leverage those dollars, and how you are saving a ton of money for the taxpayer.
So you mentioned earlier it's $1.9 billion, and we have about $1.1 billion that we have available through Measure M2.
Local money.
Local money made available through the Measure program, and we're very happy about that. But that still leaves us with, $600–700 million of funding need to do the program.
Big gap.
A little bit of money from the state of California, about $80 million. A little bit of traditional federal money, about $50 million. But that leaves us.
Don't you love it when Darrell talks about a little bit of money and 80 millions and 50 millions? I mean, that's big money in my neighborhood.
Well, 100 million a mile. Think of it that way.
Wow.
So, so there's a program that the federal government has that is basically a federally backed loan, and it's the Transportation and Innovation Finance program. It's called TIFIA, and they've been around since about 2000, and they've done about half dozen loans in California. And basically what it is you commit to you get a loan from the federal government, can't be more than a third of the project cost, so in our case about $630 million, but then you get a rate that is basically the T-bill rate. So in our case the rate is 2.91%.
Wow.
On $629 million.
Wow.
And that allows us to get the money now, build the project, and then we pay it back with toll revenues. So no taxpayer dollars are paying back the loan.
That's great.
Only the toll revenues are paying back the loan.
That's
and if for
great.
some reason toll revenues don't materialize as planned, the taxpayers are not on the hook for the loan. So it's protected in that manner.
Yeah.
And the great thing is if we had went and done a sort of traditional toll revenue financing or a traditional loan.
Now listen to this, taxpayers.
The difference, Jerry, just the difference in interest cost is $300 million. So we saved $300 million in interest costs by going down this route.
That's huge. Congratulations to all of you that are in the building, worked on this with Darrell. That's
very exciting.
You have to be really proud of them.
We are. It's the second largest TIFIA loan in California history.
Yeah. So that, taxpayers, when you're paying that half-cent sales tax and you're seeing it leveraged like this, that's why I talk about it being one of the greatest government agencies and the best run that I know of, because they're using really innovative financing and they're thinking outside the box and they're saving hundreds of millions of dollars on a project that's absolutely necessary for our mobility. Really, really brilliant. But you're not all about freeways. Let's talk about some of the really innovative stuff you're doing. We front-loaded a lot of transportation on the freeways in the early action plan, but you're also very, very busy in transit. So let's talk about OC Streetcar and about the bus and what we're doing with it.
Well, as I mentioned a few moments ago, when you have a region like Southern California with 20 million people, there's not one thing that's going to make make mobility better or reduce traffic. So we're looking at it from multiple fronts. So we are the transit operator in the county, and the densest part of our county is right in the center, Santa Ana, Garden Grove in particular. We've made significant investments in the rail line between San Diego, Orange County, and Los Angeles, where Metrolink and Amtrak run. But that last mile connection, that last 2 miles is really important. So we've been working for a few years with the city of Santa Ana and Garden Grove, and we're putting in a modern streetcar, electric streetcar, light rail transit project, and it'll go from the Santa Ana train station into the Civic Center, which you know is being renovated now, and new buildings, about 25,000 employees in that area. And then it'll make its way out to Westminster and Harbor Boulevard. We're completely done with engineering design. We're in procurement for vehicles, and we're working through the final detailed federal funding. We hope to break ground later this year and open in 2020.
Yeah, that's great.
Very excited about it. It's a rigorous planning process at the federal level, and it's been rated very high, even in a very skeptical administration, I would say. They've rated it very high. Well,
and it's difficult. This is a competitive process to be able to get in one of these projects, and to get it in our region is really a kind of cool thing. And it's really the beginning of what will become a system. So it's the opportunity to operate it and get people used to it. And it makes sense to do it in a really dense area like you've planned it. So
you know, Santa Ana is one of the it's the fifth densest city in America that has more than 200,000 people. So there's a lot of density. But we don't think about it because we don't see the high rises, right? But the density is different, but it's very dense. And, you know, what South County needs is different than what Central County needs, and North County and West County. We're trying to find fits for each of the parts of the county to deal with their individual needs as appropriate.
And so let's talk about that, Darrell. I mean, everybody knows that pays attention to transportation, that bus systems, not just in Orange County, but throughout the entire country, and particularly in large urban areas, are under stress, right? They're not doing very well in delivering public transit, and people aren't riding them like they used to. And you've done something innovative in Orange County to sort of address how to reshape the bus and change its use in the county. So talk a little bit about OC Bus 360.
So we started a few years ago, seeing probably a little earlier than maybe our counterparts in Los Angeles or Long Beach or Riverside or even San Diego. We saw some declining bus ridership, and there's a lot of theories about what is caused by that. UCLA, you know, you're an alum of UCLA. They recently released a study that basically says there's more private automobile ownership, there's less immigration, things of that nature. So what that led us to, Jerry, was saying, hey, not every community needs a 40-foot bus. Some do. And when those communities that do need it, we should maximize it. We should make good quality, frequent service that goes early morning to late night in the places that need it. But we don't need those in other communities. You know, and we did some things. San Clemente is an example. We had big buses in San Clemente. Working with the city there, we took out the big buses. We put in weekend summer shuttles Thursday through Sunday, and we entered into an interesting and innovative partnership with Lyft. We're learning a lot about how to work with the TNCs.
Oh, cool.
But they didn't,
that last mile connection and now the private sector. I like it.
And it's not perfect. We're still learning. It's a pilot. But they didn't need 40-foot buses in San Clemente. So we took those 40-foot buses, redeployed them in the center part of the county where we do need them.
That made sense.
And we put some smaller things there, weekend service. So, and we've been trying to recreate that over the course of the county. Mobile ticketing, online booking for paratransit. We're up to about 1 million app sessions per month, meaning people opening an OCTA app and looking at where their bus is at, how to buy a ticket. We've sold about 600,000 bus tickets now on mobile apps.
That's great.
And we're starting an on-demand transit, what we call a micro-transit program in 2 pilot areas, one in Huntington Beach and one in Aliso Viejo later this summer. Bottom line, ridership on the improved lines is up 19%. So in an era of declining bus ridership, we've pushed the places where we've made investment in the places that need it up 19% on those improved routes.
And that's another example of what I think is innovative leadership that you can count on from OCTA. I'm running out of time, so I can't ask you the other questions I have for you. That means you'll have to come back.
I'll come back.
I promised you that I would tell you something about him that you didn't know and that I know, and I'm going to rat him out as a former chair, and there's not a damn thing he can do about it because you just got to sit here and take it. What you don't know about this guy, besides the fact that he's good at transportation planning and running an innovative agency and a brilliant leader, is that he plays a guitar. And that he surfs, although I'm not sure you do surf guitar.
No surf guitar.
No surf guitar, but you do surf and you do play the guitar.
I do. Those are my 2 outlets. You know, so I've played guitar for 30 years. It's my favorite thing to do. Surfing, obviously, Orange County. It's a great thing to do. And you know, the thing about the surfboard, Jerry, is the phone never rings when you're on a surfboard.
That's exactly
so
right.
It's a great place to escape for a few minutes.
So he even does mobility in the ocean, right? I mean, he's got to move everywhere he is. All right, I'm going to make you sit and listen now because I'm going to do our dumb criminal segment. And I brought out some dumb criminal stories special for you, Mr. Johnson.
Okay.
So I've got several stories to go through. I got to do them really quickly because we're going to run out of time. Julie's going to get angry with me. But they all deal in some fashion or other with mobility. The first one is about bad habits. So the police say that a man answering a stolen car charge went to court in Connecticut. So he's up on charges for stealing a car. So 25-year-old Jonathan Rivera was at Hartford Superior Court to appear before the judge on a charge of first-degree larceny and tampering with a motor vehicle. The parking authority agents were in the lot. They're just scanning plates, and they see a car that looks stolen, so they start watching it. Rivera comes out, gets inside it, and starts to drive away. They arrested him, so now he's up for second-degree larceny for taking a stolen motor vehicle to his first court appearance. Good job, Mr. Rivera. All right, second one. Second one is about people who decide that they're going to rob a man at a gas station. So in Atlanta, they robbed him of his wallet at the gas station, and then they take off. The cops caught up with him a couple of miles later and arrested 21-year-old Justin Larry and 18-year-old Naji Logan. It appears the guys had gotten a whole 2 miles before they ran out of gas. You might want to gas up before you go, guys. Not good transportation. This is a guy who decided, I don't need gas and I don't need to use my own car. He hailed a cab and had the cab take him from his apartments on Monday morning. A guy named Ryan Michael Stepien was arrested Monday for robbing a Charlestown bank. What happened was the cab driver, George Lyon, picked him up at his apartment, drove him to the Charlestown bank, waited for him. When he came out of the bank carrying a big bag, he took him to a park where he has to be dropped off. Lyon noticed that he had recognized his face from Facebook as someone who had robbed the prior bank, called the cops, and he was arrested. So your cabbie turns you in. Bad choice of transportation, but this is my all-time favorite. A drug dealer in Nevada was caught when he tried to escape the cops on his Tao scooter. That's right. They had a low-speed chase. This chase began in Carson City when deputies noticed that Mr. Scrudy, is his name, Joseph Scrudy, had run out of a drug deal on his Tao scooter. He went down Highway 50 and then jumped onto the sidewalk to try to avoid the cops. He ended up running into a cruiser, and his scooter got stuck under the cruiser. When they arrested him, Scrudy said he was only running from them because he had to return the scooter to its rightful owner. So there you are. There's your dumb criminal stories. All of them transportation.
I appreciate the linkage to transportation, and I wish some of those weren't real, but something tells me they are.
They're all, I'm telling you, I've got the data on all of them. All right, we've come to the end of our show. I have to say goodbye. I hope you have a great first day of spring. Enjoy it. We got a little bit of rain coming, but here's the good news, California. We're told it's the last rain of the season, so you got a little bit of wet for a couple of weeks, and that's all you're going to get. Remember to tune in next week. Our guest next week will be Jenna Jensen from Chalk Hospital. She is the Chief Governmental Officer for Children's Hospital of Orange County. We'll talk about all the things that they're doing that are innovative for children's health, and about the stresses on the health system, particularly for children's health in the 21st century. So tune in for that. We'll surely have Darrell on again. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely.
You get to go home with your own Java for Jerry mug as the parting gift, so that'll look good in your corner office. We'll see you all next week. Have a good week. Make good decisions, and we'll see you next time on Java with Jerry.